One of the skills we need to learn in a algebra class is how to manipulate an equation and get one variable on one side. So what I want to do for this equation is I want to get the y all by itself, and that is solving an equation for y. So this is what I want to get all by itself. And in order to get that all by itself, I have to get rid of the 2x. And the way that I can get rid of that 2x is by subtracting 2x from both sides of the equation. Now when I subtract 2x from both sides of the equation, I'm going to be left with y on the left-hand side. And then the thing that I have to realize is that these two terms right here are not like terms because they both don't have an x in them, or they're both not just numbers. So there's no way that I can simplify that to just one term. I just need to write them next to each other. And so I'm going to choose to write negative 2x plus 5, but if you wanted to write positive 5 minus 2x, that would be exactly the same thing. And so this would be the first problem, solve for y. Now the second example that I just wrote down here is going to be a little bit harder. I still want to try to get the y all by itself. So this is what I want to try to get all by itself. And so in order to get all that all by itself, I need to get rid of the 4x, and I have to get rid of the 3. The thing I can get rid of first is the 4x. So I am going to subtract 4x from both sides of this equation. And when I subtract 4x from both sides of the equation, I'm going to be left with 3y equals, and again, remember, these two things are not like terms. And since they're not like terms, I can't combine them. And so I'm just going to write them next to each other. I'm going to choose to write negative 4x first. I'm going to write negative 4x plus 9, but it doesn't matter. Now, I'm still trying to get the y all by itself. So in order to get this y all by itself, I have to get rid of the 3. The 3 and the y are being multiplied, so I need to undo that by dividing by 3. And then I have to divide everything on the other side by 3. So if I take 3y divided by 3, I get 1y. If I take a negative 4x divided by a 3, it doesn't simplify. It stays a fraction, and it is okay to have fraction answers. In fact, fraction is going to be one of your favorite F words to use in this class. Then if I take positive 9 divided by 3, I get positive 3. And so this would be the original equation, solve for y. The next example I would like to do is demonstrate how to solve an equation. This is a complicated equation because it has variables on both sides. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line down through where the equal sign is, because this is going to show where both sides of the equation are. And I'm going to try to get all the numbers on one side, I'm going to try to get all the variables on the other. I have two choices. I'm going to choose to move the variable first, but I have two choices. I can either move the 4x to the left-hand side, or I can move the 7x to the right-hand side. I'm going to choose to move the 4x because if I move it by subtracting it, subtract 4x from both sides, I have a 7x minus 4x, and that gives me positive 3x. I kind of like it when the number before the variable is positive. So I have 3x minus 17 equals positive 1. Now this is just a regular two-step equation, and if we can get it to this step, I am confident that you'll be able to solve this with no problem. I have to add 17 to both sides because I want to get the term with the variable by itself. And so I'm going to be left with 3x is equal to 18. And then I want to solve for x, so that means I got to get rid of the 3, and I can divide both sides by 3. And so my final answer for this one is x equals 6. There's a total of 5 examples in this video, and we're on number 4, so we're about done. Again, what I'll do first on here is draw a line through where the equal sign is so you can see where both sides of the equation are. And what I notice on the left-hand side is I have a little bit of work to do first because I have a distributor property. So I need to take 3 times the x, and I also need to take 3 times the negative 2. So 3 times x is 3x. And if I take 3 times negative 2, I get negative 6. And then I still have the plus 5, and then I still have it equal to 3x minus 1. I need to combine some like terms on the left-hand side. I have a negative 6 and I have a positive 5. Those two numbers have opposite signs, so I need to subtract them. And if I take 6 minus 5, I get 1. It's going to be a negative 1 because 6 was the bigger number. equals 3x minus 1. Something seems a little strange in this step right now because I have the same thing on both sides. But let's try to do what we just did in example number 3 and try to get all the variables on one side first. So I'm going to try to move the 3x's on the right-hand side to the left-hand side. It really doesn't matter, but I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. And when I do that, my variables cancel out. So it's okay to have the variables cancel out. And I'm just left with a number. -1 equals -1. And I hope that you remember from first semester that if you get a result like that, that means many solutions. And that's what I would write for my final answer, many solutions. All right, here's the fifth and final example. Let's do this the same way I just did the other equations. I'm going to draw a line through where my equal sign is to show where both sides of the equation are. Again, just like the last example, I have a little bit of work that I have to do first. I have to take a -2 times an x, and I have to take a -2 times a +2. If I take a -2 times an x, I get a -2x. If I take a -2 times a +2, I get a -4. Equals -2x plus 1. I still have an equation with variables on both sides, so let's try to get all the variables on one side first. I kind of like the variables on the left-hand side, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add 2x to both sides. I'm going to try to move the variable to the left-hand side. Now when I do that, the -2x and the +2x add up to nothing, so don't write anything. It adds up to 0. You don't even have to write it. So on the left-hand side, I'm left with a -4. On the right-hand side, the x's cancel out also, and I'm left with a +1. So this is my result, -4 equals 1. And I hope that you remember from first semester that if we get an answer like this, it doesn't make any sense, and so what I'm going to write for my answer is no solution.